Right, so taking a look at the grading sheet with this, just to run through it again like we did in class, what I'm looking for with the name of the project, I really want to see a reflection of who the target group is or the client or whatever, something that you've designed specifically for that person. We already know that it's going to pull from lots of weightlifting things or aerobics or whatever, that's fine, but something that would identify that it's specific to your client. Now, the biggest thing that I'm looking for are these three components. When we're talking about what are we trying to do with your client, you got to tell the person what are we trying to achieve. So based on whoever you pick or select for a client in there, what are your goals for that person? What should they be doing? It's the big why question. Why are we doing this? What does it look like? How do the things that you're doing, what how as you walk through the different components of the exercise program, how does that help them achieve those goals that they've established, and how will we know that we're there when it's all done, or that we're making at least progress? These are the little benchmarks along the way. It's the big incentives. How will we know that we're getting closer to our target? Now, when we get to the history of the program, this people always struggle with this one at first because you're pulling from aerobics, you're pulling from weightlifting, you're pulling from even things like Pilates or other programs that are out there. I want to know, where did those types of things that you're pulling from, where did those originate? People did not always lift weights just recreationally to get fit, for example. People didn't always run for aerobic exercise, for example. Where did those things come from, and how are those foundations that we're drawing upon to create your own program? I want to see you give reference to what you're pulling from to devise something that's unique to your person. Now, for the presentation itself, this can look a lot of different ways. We're looking at videos, we're looking at a PowerPoint, you're looking at pictures that you pull up, maybe video clips, maybe you talk us through as a class and you show us what it looks like, or maybe you have us actually doing them and you coach us through what we're doing. So however you want to do that, in all cases, I'm looking for how do you tie in with those moves or those techniques that you're doing? How does that fit into our overall goals? How does that fit into our philosophy? It's the big why thing. When you're having somebody do something, we want to know, how does that fit into their goals? What do we focus on? When you're talking about the form and communicating that, somehow, whether it's demonstrating or visual to us, talk us through a little bit of what does it look like to do it properly, and then we take a look at, how do you know you're doing it right? We know you're showing us how to do it properly, but what are the effects? What should be that feedback loop that tells us it's working, that you're doing it right, how that fits in the overall goal? I want to see a variety. In class, I said a lot of times, you can pull from a deck of cards, and this card does the same muscle grouping, but it does something just a little bit different, alternate activity to do the same type of activity, but it's just not the same thing every single day. And lastly, I want to make sure you use your checklist so that all the muscle groups are used. We are not naming the specific muscles in this case. You're just talking about groups of muscles in general, upper leg, lower leg, or whatever. And you're going to give a thorough workout. I'm going to go through and say, okay, did you hit all of the major muscle groups, or did you neglect some areas, the back of the arm, the front of the arm? You did no lower legs, that kind of thing. So I want to make sure we're doing those within that it's a thorough thing. No. Now with this, the explanation is going to be a written form, and this could be a paper. This could be something that you list. If you do a PowerPoint, you'd have some supplementary slides afterward, or maybe every other slide you show something that shows basic form, and then the next slide would say, okay, when you're doing this, this is specifically item by item what muscles are being used. It's going to be technical. You do not group them together like hamstrings. Okay, very specifically, you're naming those. Maybe you just do some slides at the end, ancillary slides we call them. They're just kind of follow-up slides afterward that go back to what you had them do and specifically which muscle is there. And again, I want to see written out, why are we doing this? When you hit a major muscle group or move with something, you're talking through why are we doing it? How does that fit back into their overall goal? Written out, so they have a written descriptor as well. A good example of that is just saying, okay, when we do this, remember this is going to firm up those lower legs because we want to be able to do this extra thing or whatever. So refer back to what our goals were always. Now, routine communication, this is a general thing that could be, like a 2-week calendar of something. On Mondays, we are doing the lower leg workout. We're going to be focusing on this and this and this. Tuesdays is going to be more of a cardio day. So mix it up a little bit. It includes time frames. It organizes. A person really knows what the goal is for that day. But then you're going to be talking through a little bit of recovery time. You don't do all lower leg things all in one day, and including some uppers. You actually have some deliberate focus of we have a progression of overall fitness throughout the whole thing. So I want to see that written out somehow, some type of calendar, some type of thing written out. Could be a poster board, could be a PowerPoint slide, could be going to a general calendar. I'm not really worried about what one person does on the 18th of March 2 years from now. It's more of in Wednesdays, this is what we tend to do or whatever. References, I want to make sure, even with pictures that you use, that you're citing those references. Usually just use the URL. I don't care if it's MLA, certain forms, APA, whatever, I don't care. Just as long as I can reference those and where you're pulling them. YouTube video, just copy that URL and cite that in there, please. Now, the presentation, I think we all know what it looks like to be well rehearsed, well practiced, and coordinated. I'm really looking to see, does it flow? Can you go from one person to another and make sure that it's kind of more seamless rather than sitting and looking at each other and saying who's going to say what next and how is this going to work and so on. You can do this in a video format. I want to see good transitions between those. If it's a PowerPoint, slide to slide. If it's one of those other things where it's more coordinated, where you show us in class, it's already been practiced ahead of time. You don't sit there and kind of fumble around with it. With all of this, I do need to say you're working in groups of 3 this year, which means that you will be working with maybe somebody that you don't know all that well. Nobody's requiring that you go and sit in each other's living room and figure this all out. You can break this down, kind of parcel it out, who's going to work on what aspect of this, and who's going to be responsible for saying what. You can have some people do videos, another person from the same group talk about the same client, but focus on a different way and do that in a PowerPoint or however you want to do it. So a lot of freedom with this. Don't feel that you're entrenched into everybody has to be on exactly the same page with that. Just get the job done and I'll grade accordingly. This is a test. Think of it this way, and I focus it that way as like a test because a lot of times when people have projects, they think it's just kind of fun and games and then it's all just kind of superficial fluff. And I want to make sure that we are very detailed. Remember, you know a lot about anatomy at this point, and I want to see how can you pull our content into something very specific when we are paid employees and this is our profession. Can we be professional about this and be very articulate, very educated, and communicate that to our client? And by client, I mean the person grading it, which is me.